Hey Dawn,
Hey.
how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks for doing this interview today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hey,
Yeah,
everybody.
we've got three so far. We can wait a little bit,
Great.
but we can also just jump in.
Sure. However you want to do it.
Okay, let's just start talking, I guess.
Okay.
How's your day been today? How's everything going?
It's going well. Yeah, I explored some of Colorado yesterday. I went to Netherlands,
Ooh, cool.
um, and took that historical carousel. There's a fan-powered pipe organ that plays Sentimental Journey and Jeepers Creepers. So I was
Amazing.
I was digging on it. I'm doing good. It's Sunday.
Are the leaves all changing up there?
It was really beautiful. There were those little bright flashes of yellow. It's nice to see some trees for sure. And
Yeah, cool.
how are you today? How's your Sunday?
It's good. It's kind of a marathon day. I have my church gig, and then I taught some students, and I'm playing Nocturne after this. So
Oh
it's
my word.
yeah.
You're a rock star.
So are you. Cool. Well, I kind of wanted to start maybe hearing a little bit about maybe what brought you to Denver and how long you've been here and kind of what you've been doing over at Metro and all that stuff.
Sure. I'll jump right into that. I was teaching in Seattle for 18 years, adjunct work and touring and playing and writing and doing all the things that you do to piece together your career as a musician. I think for most of us, it does include some kind of teaching. So I was doing a lot of high school teaching, a lot of teaching at Cornish, like I said, adjunct, and um, it was many years, but it was such a beautiful season. We got married, we had kids, we bought a house, and I continued to develop some relationships on the East Coast and play in some bands. But I needed something a little bit more steady. And, we talked for a long time about what that looks like for me as an artist and what that looks like for some of my peers around that same time. Just do I go further into higher academia or, something different? So I got my master's kind of late. I got that in 2015. I did a low residency program at the time because life was so full. I needed the option of maintaining that schedule and busyness, and did this really cool program in Vermont. You didn't ask me about my master's, but that's what brought me here. I got my master's and started applying for jobs several years ago. We moved here 2 years ago, almost exactly. Last August or a month ago would be 2 years, and moved for the job at Metro. I had been applying for jobs in Washington, and I had actually applied for the job at Metro 4 years prior to that too.
Okay.
I love the mission statement of the school. I love Ron Miles. I love the I loved everything about it, and I still do. I feel like I landed right into a beautiful program that we're just meant for each other. So
That's so
I've been
awesome.
there 2 years. Yeah, it's so great, and it's different from any teaching I've done. It does have an administrative aspect to it, as I'm coordinating the jazz department and teaching full time. So I'm learning a lot in that process, and I'm excited to make the program stronger and provide everything the students need as much as possible, especially in COVID.
Yeah, that's so awesome. How has it been?
Yeah.
Like, are you guys open? Are you guys having in-person school right now?
We only have ensembles in person.
Okay.
Everything else is online, and we kept ensembles pretty small and just performance majors only. They rehearse twice a week, really
Wow.
spread out, big rooms.
I bet that's been chaotic to figure out.
It's been chaotic. We were, really wanting to cater to students who didn't feel comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a requirement to do ensemble this semester, but most of them wanted to, understandably, right? It's the
Yeah,
one thing that we've all been missing so much.
I
So
know.
The one thing I'm super bummed about is big band. I don't want to say I couldn't, because if we continue like this, I will find a way. But I didn't feel like I could safely find a way to rehearse with them on a regular basis. So they're on hold, but this is giving me a chance to arrange and write a little bit. And you and Annie are my heroes on that. So I gotta get my act together.
That's so nice of you. Yeah, Annie's here, Paul's here. We got a crowd. Might be a crowd of 4.
Oh, hi, Annie.
If at any point any of you guys watching have questions, feel free to drop them in the little comment thingy and we'll answer them. That's so cool. We're so glad. Denver's glad that you're here.
Oh, thanks.
Kind of crazy. We haven't really hung much yet, but I think it's on the horizon.
We need to. Hey, yeah. Paul.
Hey, Paul.
I want to build my sisterhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get my hang on. I felt like I was just starting to go out a little bit consistently, and I know I don't know hardly anyone, you know. I think I know some of the players here, but I know that there's a huge pocket of musicians I haven't even heard, and I really am excited to dig into the scene here a little bit more.
Yeah, I think CCJA is gonna host another girls' jam pretty soon, like outdoors.
Oh, cool.
So maybe we'll have all the women hang at that.
I would love that.
Annie said she'd love to hear how you got into playing jazz.
Hey, Annie. That's a good question. I was a very shy child with hardly any confidence in that department, in the social department. So one thing I really wanted and asked for a long time was a piano. My mom played at church, and the church organist lived down the street. We used to go over there, and I would just be like, can we get one of these? So we finally did. I was 10, and my first teacher, we lived in Oregon, and my first teacher was a ragtime pianist, and I had no idea how cool that was at the time. His name is Keith Taylor. He's passed on, but he had all these LPs he had made, Carolina Shout, all sorts of Joplin. He was just like magnificent. So I had lessons with him, but he was, you know, mainly introducing me to notes and staves and keys, and we didn't get into any improvising or anything, you know, ragtime or beyond, but I learned my initial notes and sight reading with him. And we moved around a little bit, pre-junior high and back to Washington State. When I was in middle school, we lived right across the river from Portland, and I got dialed in with a classical teacher, and I was taking that pretty seriously. And this is going to sound cheesy, but I went to my first day of high school at the local high school, and I hear this announcement, you know, we need a piano player in the stage band. And I was like, maybe, you know. My mom, she was like, do it, Dawn, you got to do this. So that was my first like ever anything. I played Bryan Adams. It was so cheesy. I played Bryan Adams, a song from Robin Hood movie, I think, from Robin Hood the movie. And I played a Mozart sonata. That's all I knew, you know. I played what I knew. The band director's like, you're in, perfect, you're great, you're in. And that whole year was just painful torture. Like, I have so much compassion for these newbie jazzers who are coming into it in middle school and high school. I played everything as a major triad, every chord. I had never seen a lead sheet, and I was like, well, it says C minus, all right, C major.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just awful, but that was like the breeding ground for me learning, because the band director was pretty abusive. He got us to swing by yelling at us. That forced the students to really form together and create kind of a cool rapport and cool support. And because we were so close to Portland, I think maybe Ron Steen is still running some sessions, but there was a drummer there, kind of like Paul, just hosted sessions all the time. And we went all the time. That's how we learn tunes. We'd get 4 tunes ready together and we'd go play. And I didn't even know that I needed jazz in my life, or the freedom that we experience when we improvise for the first time. I didn't even know I needed that. And I'll never forget sitting in on a blues for the first time, shaking with nerves, having like the most exhilarating feeling after that, taking my first solo, probably playing a wrong note, probably feeling like crying afterwards. But that after that first blues that I ever sat in on, I was like, this, I just got to do this with 4 other people. So that's how I got into it, Annie. I auditioned on a whim, and the rest is history.
That's amazing. Wow. That, like, this story vaguely reminds me of, like, I have this habit right now. I've had a habit of going through my Facebook memories every day just to, like, see the funny things I would post as a child. And I saw one from, like, 11 years ago yesterday.
Oh,
that
wow.
said, it's like Camila Vitalis is nervous for her solo in jazz. And then, like, a few hours later, it said Camila Vitalis did okay at her solo in jazz. It was just so funny. And sometimes that's still how I feel. It's like,
Totally.
I did okay.
Me too.
But yeah.
Me too.
The learning curve is so like interesting and like frustrating, but then when you get to those peaks and you reach a new level, that I feel like that's so satisfying, especially in jazz. For some reason, more than other things I learn in life. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I feel that way too. I get nerves still too. I think the nerves have started to be something I count on feeling, you know, and then channeling into the music, hopefully.
Yeah.
And knowing that it's not just about my own nerves and my own feelings. If there is a band, it's about everybody and what I can tap into or get to participate in that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah. And how do you practice getting better as a jazz musician? I think that's also sometimes not as clear as it might be playing notated music or playing a certain style.
Do you have any, I guess, tips for like someone who's really starting to get into improvising but isn't sure the best approach is to try to integrate like improvising into their playing?
Yeah, lots of ways. I think the bottom line would be to trust yourself and your instincts and start with something that you like, even if it's not jazz, even if it's not a jazz song. Start with a song that you like and learn the song, learn the melody. And, you know, we could all sing Happy Birthday 5 times in a row and probably change it slightly each time, right? So taking a song that you love, that is stuck in your head, that makes you feel really good when you hear it and play it, and just starting to mess with that melody. I think that's one really fun, easy way in, because we all speak the language of music, whether we play or not, right? We all, well, maybe we don't all, but most of us in this society, we're so influenced by what we're listening to, you know, and a lot of times art reflects culture and what's going on. And I think that's a start. And I think sometimes, you know, you can know too much and you can talk yourself out of it, and you can have that judgment hat on where it's like, well, that didn't sound right. Well, that doesn't go. But I think just trying it, learning a song, messing with the melody, finding a recording of it. I tell a lot of my students, even the ones that improvise really well, I talk about it in terms of improvisation being a conversation and being a way that we get to explore discovering how we're doing that day, or what we experienced with our family that week, but doing it through notes. And sometimes you can think about like theater majors or actors doing improv theater sports and having a certain subject and theme, and okay, you're this and you're this and you're this, you got 15 minutes, go, right? So sometimes we're under that kind of pressure to improvise in the moment. Time's going by, your turn, take a solo. That's stressful. But if you can find ways to prepare a bit and to know that it's a conversation and that you probably have a few vowels and verbs and nouns in common with everyone else in that conversation, you have something to contribute. Even if you're not soloing, you can be improvising by conversing and being a part of what's going on.
Totally.
I think there's a lot of ways to approach it. I appreciate and admire watching how so many different people do it. So maybe just also knowing that there are ways to practice improvising and ways to think of yourself as an improviser. You don't have to define yourself only one way. That could be one part of what you do. But it's really fun to have a conversation with other people.
Yeah, I think that's actually so refreshing to just, it's a good reminder for me too. Like, to not always get caught up in like my solo. It's time to shred. Like, it's a constant, in jazz, you're constantly improvising with people around you and conversing. It's a nice way to think about that.
Yeah, I think, like it could be totally free, go for it, jump off a cliff, do whatever. But an example of, maybe playing jazz, improvised jazz, like Thelonious Monk and Art Blakey, the way that they played behind a soloist or played in the rhythm section, I feel like Monk, it's not a huge departure from his comping into his solo is not a huge departure. He's still making the same kind of statements. And he's still, listening and invested and dipping into the time that's happening. And, it doesn't have to be pressures on. It doesn't have to all fall on one person.
Yeah, that's such a good example. Man, I have so cool things to tell my students now.
I think too, it's sometimes fun. I don't know, I've worked with a lot of classical musicians who are interested in improvising, and sometimes it's handy for them to have access to so many patterns and scales and to be able to apply a more theoretical approach to the improv. But what was I going to say about Monk? Oh, it's also fun to think about it like pop music, like just coming up with your part and playing a good grooving part, and maybe a couple iterations of that, but nothing wrong with just playing something that feels good and repeating it.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
I've been like really into listening to Horace Silver a lot lately, and that's what always strikes me about his comping is like how it completely sets up an environment and a groove, and it's like I've been listening to Gregory Is Here all the time, and like I get distracted because Horace's comping is so good. I like can't listen to anything. Also, I feel like it's really high in the mix, which might have a lot to do with that.
I wonder if that's purposeful too. Like I feel like the piano records, like even Duke on a trio record, he's a little bit louder.
Yeah.
And Horace, it speaks because of the range. Like he's playing the extremes of the instrument, and it just pows through like a drum. Because he's not in there with the horns. He's like totally extreme.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And anybody out there got any questions? I have some I can just throw out there. I was gonna ask, like, if you have if I guess this is a multi-layered question, but like, kind of how the pandemic has affected you. And let's do Annie's first. What is something you've been digging, listening to recently?
Annie, I love it. Okay, I got to be honest. I just bought. I just bought the new Fiona, which is kind of it's a trip. I can listen to it in rotating days. And I just bought the new Knee Body record chapters with it features Gretchen and Becca and Michael Mayo and really beautiful collaboration with some vocalists. I've been digging that. And during during this COVID time, it feels good to listen to stuff I know. So I love Alan Hampton. I've been putting on this Moving Sidewalks record just every day, and it's a nice, familiar, soothing thing. Definitely need to expand. So I've been trying to check out this Alice Coltrane trio record where she plays organ and keyboards.
Oh, cool.
And most recently, thanks to this pianist, Gary Versace, you guys probably know who that is, but Gary and I had a little Zoom hang and we were talking about Motown and rhythm sections that were rhythm sections, like Aretha's rhythm section. So I've been trying to do a little bit of research and listening to her live concert. That's where I'm at. It's like tip of the iceberg. I need to get deeper. But how about you, Annie? We got to share a playlist.
Yeah, Annie, tell us what you've been listening to. She's typing madly, I can tell.
Oh, good. Actually, I have a goal of transcribing a Paul Bley solo. I need to do that in the next couple months.
Yeah.
Get in on that.
In my time at DU in Eric Gunnison's class, we would always have like a Bley week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did you guys do?
It was like kind of a composition-based class, so like Eric would bring in a few tunes, and then we would try to like write kind of in that style. But I'm actually thinking we actually did that more with Carla Bley, which was like,
Carla.
But Annie said she's been in a nonstop Keith Jarrett mode.
Yeah.
That's some good
motivation. Oh my gosh. So speaking of Keith, do either of you know it's a record with Chuck Mangione, and I think Keith is 18, and the tune is Secret Love.
No,
it is so fast and so burning. It's outrageous.
I'm writing it down.
Oh, and Belonging, totally. Keith is dangerous for me. I need to get back to him, but I just start trying to sound like him.
Sweet, I'm excited to check that out.
Classical viola, how do I get into jazz? Hi there, that's a great question. Maybe I would just start by asking you if you have a favorite piece or a favorite 8-bar section of a piece that you have the lead melody on. And you could set a metronome and just take that melody and improvise with different phrasing. You could wait to come in. You could leave more space in between. You could come in early. You could take little cells of that melody that you love, and like by cell, I mean 3 or 4 notes, a 3 or 4 note passage, like do do da da, and you could take that cell and move it around your instrument. You could try it up in fourths or up in seconds, and you don't have to have the context of harmony underneath that. You could just take that melody that you know and try improvising that. You might even start composing something like it, and then you're really doing it, you know. We're composing as we play. But for real, if you want to get into jazz, I would say learn a 12-bar blues for starters. So one that I really like is Bag's Groove or Tenor Madness. You can find a recording on YouTube by Miles Davis and Red Garland, I believe. And 12-bar blues will take up the 12-bar form that we're so used to hearing and is so ingrained in our bodies. Whether we've listened to a lot of blues or not, that's going to be something familiar. But hey, you can hit me up on Instagram. I don't know this person's first name, but it's Watkins. You can hit me up and we could exchange. I would love that. Yeah.
Keep the questions coming, you guys. That's awesome.
And more string players in jazz, please. I can send you some references for that. I think it's such a cool instrument to hear. Oh man, maybe start by listening to Ray Nance. He was one of Duke Ellington's trumpet players, but he played violin. And there's a record called Portrait of the Bean. Coleman Hawkins meets Duke Ellington, and it's a small group. It's like 13 pieces. but the last track is a jam. They just improvise. It's a turnaround in B flat. That means it's just chords that are in the key of B flat. I think it's 16 measures, and Ray Nance plays the coolest violin solo on that. Maybe that's something to start with, you know?
Sweet.
And copy part of it. You know, if you like part of it, copy it.
I have a cool violin student in one of my CCJA groups right now.
Really?
It's so cool to hear that texture.
Yeah, I love it.
It's like I have like violin, alto, and trombone. It's like a very cool texture for melodies. It's been fun to hear that.
Different ranges, but some overlap too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely geeked and obsessed about strings in my master's because I had never written anything for strings, and I had never even like opened a book. I was like, oh yeah, okay, my sister played violin and it sounded awful, no thanks. But I worked hard on it. I wrote a whole suite for viola.
Cool.
I wrote 8 string quartets. You can do it.
Have you ever integrated like any string writing into your jazz stuff?
Yes. And Camilla, I'm one of those people, I do something and I get excited about it and I'm immediately over it. But right before I left Seattle, I did a string quartet concert with rhythm section, and it was really fun. We did a bunch of music I'd written in that program and a bunch of other new music. They were not comfortable improvising at all. The string quartet was like they were my friends and they were great Seattle players, Seattle Symphony players, but I had written in some improvised sections, and yeah, no one really wanted to take any of those. So I would like to try it again with maybe some string players who were open to that. Yeah, I like the idea of, maybe I should bring this back, but I really liked the idea of using the string quartet to realize the changes in a way, like to realize the rhythm and the changes, like sort of like maybe pop songs, but like grooving, how to make them groove and how to make that time feel good and how to make chord progression, actualized in 4 different lines, linearly. I would be into exploring it again.
Yeah.
For sure.
Paul just said they have CCJA has some jazz bowing technique stuff from
great.
You can share. Yeah.
Great.
We should make that available. We'll post it on our social media stuff.
I would love that. And I hope you do it. I hope you do this project. I'm excited.
We'll see. We'll see. Do you have any like project ideas that you're hoping to get going or you have been working on for like recordings or
anything?
Yeah,
a couple of them got totally crushed by COVID, but I think in a way it was, it's been a beautiful time because it's forced me to develop some new recording skills here at home. I got a nice mic and it's forced me to work on my songwriting, which was kind of back here. I wanted to do it. So I've been working long distance with a friend of mine in Brooklyn. We actually went to Cornish together a long time ago, and he's had a really cool career playing in Passenger and Angus and Julia, and he's a keyboard phenom. But we're doing some songs remotely, and it's really cool. It's like I can be up till 2 or 3 a.m. tracking a vocal part and do as many layers as I want because I'm home and trying to get that going. I'm doing Monk residency at Nocturne next month.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, Monk's birthday month. So we're going to do every Thursday. That's going to be with Drew Heller and Seth Lewis, and we have a different horn guest every week. Sorry. So
cool. I'm going to come. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's going to be good. Right at the beginning of COVID, I had planned this 10-day tour as a band leader. I've never actually been a band leader on a tour. And it was for a trio that I do with Matt Wilson and Chuck Deerdorf, bass player in Washington. Gratitude Trio, we call ourselves, but we had planned to record, so we'll probably try to do that again. And I applied for a little grant for a local Denver band with Shane and Anisha and Drew and Greg Garrison. So
Cool.
hopefully that can manifest.
That's so awesome. Um, do you think for me, like COVID has kind of given me a much needed break to like
Mm.
reevaluate why I like music and why I'm doing this. Um, have you found it to be beneficial for you to like kind of get to pause and
Yeah,
reflect? And what has that been like for you?
yeah. I like what you just said, reevaluate. I think I had the summer was reflective for sure. And not super positive. I was having a lot of just personal questions. Why am I doing this? Why is this important? Why does it matter? Why does it matter what I have to offer? What is that going to do for anyone? Um, and how can I honestly encourage students to pursue this,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm feeling this way? So I was struggling with that through the summer, and I think I did a turn on that. I've turned the corner.
Yeah.
And I think we just need it even more. And there are so many offerings online, artists of all levels, of all in all regions. Everyone is trying to put their music out, and it seems like we're in a new situation and a new opportunity to support one another in this online
Mm-hmm.
platform and to collaborate in different ways. So more than ever, I feel gung-ho and on fire, and I feel like for students too, this is like they're going through this as a student.
Right.
What are they gonna be like when they come through the other end? We're gonna have an
Mm-hmm.
amazing crop of really introspective, thoughtful, purposeful, um, intentional music making, I think.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think it's like one thing I was talking about like with Paul and Annie at a CCJA meeting was like how everything seemed normal to be like stressed all the time before.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like, well, that's life. It's just stress, and you just are upset. But then
Yeah.
it kind of was like, oh, I can kind of choose what
Mm.
is important and what I want to spend my time focused on, and I think that
Yeah.
was a big benefit. And obviously, like I'm in a position of privilege to be able to say that it's been positive for me, but
Yeah.
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 Screams the band says your music has changed my life. So
Who says this?
someone in the chat.
Oh, duets. Are you talking about tandem?
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks for saying that. That
That's
was a that was a really cool, that was a special record to make. I didn't even think I was going to make a record, but playing duo, that's a whole thing.
that's a thing.
Now I actually all I want to do is duo records for the rest of my life. It's so fun, but um
I haven't really. I'm not super comfy to. I don't know. I feel like I get really scared when there's no bass player still.
mhm.
I still need to like work through that
Yeah.
block where I feel like I need to be covering everything. So
Yeah.
that's my next like hump to get over with
Yeah.
like duo playing.
Yeah, it's scary, right? It sort of feels like the rug pulled out from under you. I
Mhm.
I definitely feel like I have the temptation and tendency, if I'm left to my own devices playing solo or duo, to way overplay. You
Mhm.
can ask Anisha. I don't know if she feels that way, but those duo late night gigs at Nocturne.
Uh-huh.
It's like it's almost like I gotta get it all out.
Uh-huh.
But I've been trying to as piano players, we're like, okay, do we walk a bass line? Do we like enter that territory? Do we
Right.
what, but I don't think you have to change anything you're doing. You're playing an orchestra anyway, you know, and even with a bass player or the drummer, you're getting down there sometimes, right? You're maybe dancing in that range once in a while, but I don't know. It'd be fun to talk about it and work on it.
Yeah, I like the way I like thinking about it as like you don't need to change anything. That's a
No.
good mindset to go in because it alleviates some of the stress. Silence is just as important as the sound. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's so
totally.
cool.
Hey, Ben. Yeah, those beats you don't play, they're just as important. And someone said, Watkins, again, bass players are great. Yes, they are. They're the true heroes in the
They
music.
are.
And I don't think I could live without them. There's so many, so many, so many beautiful basses. Thank you for saying that.
Do you study bassists for your left hand or just other piano players?
Oh, heck no. Yeah, I gotta listen to the bass lines. I just transcribed a PC line on oh gosh, I just started listening to it. It's a 4-track album called Leeway, Lee Morgan, Paul Chambers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's imperative to listen to, you know, if we're talking about bass lines, for sure other bass players, but even the way guitarists play a bass line and maybe with the way a pianist plays a bass line, you know, we're going to be influenced by a different pattern and a different closeness and intervals. So a piano bass line, what I'm going to improvise on the piano is going to be what falls naturally and comfortably to me, but not necessarily what we might hear Charlie Hayden play. And Charlie Hayden is so different from Paul Chambers, right? So I've been trying to listen to that when I'm working on it. Less chromatic, more stepwise. How do I incorporate a transcription into my playing? Fabulous job. Um, so let's see. It's been a few years since I've done a transcription where I memorize the entire thing, perform the entire thing, and spent a long time on it. As I've gotten older and there's been a lot of things coming through the pipe, transcribing becomes like a daily part of practice, whether it's somebody's solo or a little section of something where I'm transcribing an arrangement so that I can write something like it, or I'm transcribing an arrangement that I have to learn and perform. But how I take solos and vocabulary, this is such a great question. I think it's important to do it by ear. But I also think that does get preached as a school of thought, like always do it by ear first, never write it out until you know it. But I think you can, like we said before about improv, there are a lot of ways to incorporate someone's solo, and there are a lot of ways to build vocabulary by transcribing. So how I like to do it is to learn, something's going to speak to you, right? You're going to choose a solo because of reasons that only you know, whether you know what they are or not. There's going to be something that you love. So start with something you love. And I'm saying this to my students too, because you get assigned stuff by me, but start by transcribing something you love. And it doesn't have to be a solo. It could be the way someone rephrases a melody. And it also doesn't have to be the entire thing. It could be one Sonny Rollins phrase that you just cannot live without. And then you learn that and have it replace the melody for you. Have it become as strong as the melody of the song. And, you know, as far as playing it in all 12 keys, I think the best bet is to set yourself up with a few other vehicles or songs that pattern might work on. So not to be too square talking about this, but if we talk about a form like rhythm changes that's 32 bars, right? There's one school of thought where you could learn eight rhythm changes heads, and Paul McKee is probably going to be like, oh great, Dawn, what is she talking about? Rhythm changes, but 8 heads, and you can play any of those heads in any 8 bars, any 8-bar section of that tune, right? That's a very cookie cutter way to approach it. But I think you can be really musical with that too. So we talk a lot about 2-5-1s in jazz. you can get into the nitty gritty of a 2-5-1 lick and play that everywhere. Play that on every tune you know. Play it every time you get to a 2-5-1. But you could also transcribe and analyze not just the notes, but the types of gestures that someone is doing, the types of breath they're playing with, right? How much space they're using. What's the dynamic? What's the tone? What's the vibrato like on the end of the note? Oh, they play a ton of phrases that are ascending, and then one big long one that goes up and down, right? You can take I like to think about it like a microscope. So if your microscope is all the way in and you're doing a lick on a 2-5-1, you're like, oh, every chord and it fits like this. But you could pull your scope way back so that it's really blurry, but you're seeing the bigger form and the bigger picture and more of those elements of the music besides where exactly do these notes work on the next solo. Maybe I want to play a solo in the style of Monk, so I know I'm not going to play any chords. I'm not going to play any rootless chords. I'm going to play low on the piano. I'm going to play clusters. My time is going to be on point, and I'm going to have the quarter note triplet as my subdivision instead of the eighth note triplet. Maybe it's something like that. I could go on, I guess, but it's hard, but you got to make it yours. And I think you have to not judge yourself too much while you're doing that transcribing process. And when you're trying it out in another context, it may not feel sincere that first time, but go for it, because you're in the process of developing what that idea or solo or transcription means to you. Like, how are you going to say it? And if you mess it up, who cares? Who cares? You were living in the shoes and hanging out with that person, right? And you're trying it in that moment of time, what it felt like to play that phrase or play that lick or play that 32 bars to Charlie Parker. But transcribe everything, man. It all influences our playing. I've referenced Monk and Charlie Parker, but I transcribe Alan Hampton too. His songwriting and the forms and the time signature and the elements and the layers. It can all feed our playing and our voice.
That totally. I feel like the CCJA Sundays this month have had a theme, which is like. Because last week Gabe gave a master class about ear training and like techniques for developing like tune memorization and stuff. And the first thing, and I think every time you've kind of started to talk about this today, you said, do something you love. Like make it something that you love doing. And that was his whole point. We spent a long time just talking about how important it is to love what you're playing.
Yeah, so true. Although there are ways. And as a student, you were probably assigned something you didn't love, but you still made it yours and you were still able to make it like you owned it, you know? I mean, I feel like if you get caught up with trying to figure out what you sound like or what your sound is going to be, or if you get caught up in how am I going to apply this solo, it's so easy to mentally just shut ourselves down, you know? But just being open and, like you said, reiterating that, finding what you love, or if it's forced upon you, finding your way through. I'm a big fan of just being really honest in the music. Yeah.
Well, we have about like 10 minutes left. Does anyone else out there have questions that you're dying to ask?
I gotta go practice after these questions. I'm just like, whew, yikesies. You know, I will say too about the music, and Ron Miles reminded me of this not too long ago. There's no rush. It's not quick. It takes time. And that's the gift of it. It takes our lifetime. We get to do this for our livelihood, for our lifetime. That means we can circle back to things we think we know and learn something new. And that means that we have our lifetime to form our vocabulary and practice, you know, and practice in all these ways. But also, I think there's no rush. There's no rush any little bit. Like when I set too much pressure on myself or maybe an unrealistic game plan or goal, I really do shoot myself in the foot. So I try to, try to offer yourself a lot of grace there, and a lot of patience, because there is no rush.
Mm-hmm. When are you going to release a vocal album?
I released one, but it was a while ago. Hi, Ben. I did an album of songs. It's a double-sided LP, and I was trying to bring that to Denver back in March before COVID. But Ben, I'm working on one. I'm working on an original song project. And if you listen to my last, every album I put out has a little bit of singing on it. So I'm getting closer. A new one, yes, a new one.
Are there any classical composers you draw from?
Totally. Oh my gosh, I don't know if this is like PC to talk about though, because there's so much talk about theory right now being not PC, right? The Western theory that we've learned, that I think a lot of us have had this formal traditional Western European theory training.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the answer is yes. And I was so blessed to have a teacher in Seattle for a very short period of time who changed my life, who showed me a way into the music, into classical music especially, but into improvising as a keyboard player, in a way thinking about it like fractals,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about shapes and intervals and ideas as fractals. And Jerome Gray, his name is Jerome, and Jerome, yes, the answer is yes. The current thing I'm working on right now is a Rachmaninoff piece called Vocalise. It's in C sharp minor. That the changes are exquisite. They're very jazz friendly. And the development of the theme it's like you could analyze it like a jazz tune, right? There's a main theme, it develops, it changes keys to the key of 5, and it comes back. And it's got some beautiful altered shapes that I don't normally play. So I'm trying to transpose those a little bit and think about it in terms of fractals. I do count my lucky stars for all the years, and Chopin and Schumann. I think that playing the classics like that can really help your facility, and it can give you a good handle on scales and patterns without thinking about it, right? So any two-part invention, or Chopin waltz, or nocturne, or preludes and fugues, these are good things as pianists. But yeah, in my master's, I listened to a ton of string quartets. That was my focus. So I was listening heavily to Ravel. And Ron has shared some new classical music with me that's amazing. Is it ICE is one of the groups I just recently was listening to a piece. Yeah, it's all on the playlist.
Yep. Sweet. Any other questions out there? Oh, Ben was wondering who was that teacher.
Jerome Gray. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Hey, can I just say to all the friends out there that are not local, Denver is so awesome, and come on through. When it's safe, I think we would all welcome you. The thing I appreciate about Denver is what I loved about old Seattle. There are like still these really cool venues and hidden spots. People, when it was normal, it seemed like people like to go out and support the arts, and there's a very warm tone that I've experienced just visiting with strangers, like sitting at Dazzle and talking to somebody, But Denver is just so great. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you.